Welcome to Mineral Talks Live, the monthly live mineral webinar that brings you in-depth and in-person interviews with mineral people from around the world. Mineral Talks Live is brought to you by a joint effort among the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, the SMMP, and BlueCap Productions. Tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay connected to your mineral world. Now, broadcasting live from beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, the land of aloha, ukuleles, and shakas, this is Mineral Talks Live. Happy December to all of you out there watching our show. Today is December 7th, 2022, and this is episode 68 of Mineral Talks Live. For those of you joining us for the first time, Mineral Talks Live is the monthly mineral talk show where we sit down with people from all facets of the mineral world to learn more about what they do and who they are. Our guests include some of the best curatrix, curators, collectors, dealers, miners, researchers, artists, and media people in the mineral world. I'm Brian Swoboda, the head cheese here at BlueCap Productions, and together with my incredible partners, Dr. Raquel Alonso Perez from the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, and Dr. Eloise Gaillou from the Society of Mineral Museum Professionals, also known as the SMMP, we'd like to welcome you to our show. If you want to see a complete list of all our past guests and links to those interviews, please visit the URL at the bottom of the screen, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. Otherwise, tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay up to date on what's going on in the mineral world. Now, one of the things that makes this program so unique is that this isn't just a conversation between me and our guests. All of you are part of the show when you participate through the chat or the Q&A features, both of which are located at the bottom of the window. The chat feature allows you to type messages to everyone watching the live show. If you have thoughts, comments, or questions about what we're discussing, this chat area is where you can post them and interact with each other while we're talking. Usually our guests and I aren't able to read those comments, but Raquel and Eloise will be very active in the chat areas and may even interject a question or comment to us during the interview. Also, this is a fun place to say hi to everyone watching the live show, and you can share where you're tuning in from so that we can see what parts of the world we're reaching. As for any general questions you may have for our guest, those questions can be typed into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the show. Finally, towards the end of the program, you'll see a window pop up on your screen. This is our quick fire 5 question, where we get to see how well you know our guests. It's all in good fun, so go ahead and play along with us. Now, on to today's show. If you've ever visited Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, no doubt you've spent some time on the National Mall. This is the huge park with the Washington Monument on one side and our Capitol building on the other. Well, right in between those two, on the north side of the mall, is the world-famous Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, the second most visited natural history museum in the world. Now, within this museum are a number of different exhibitions, but the one that is of most interest to all of us here is the Hall of Geology, Gems, and Minerals, where lives the National Gem and Mineral Collection. Included in this collection is the Hope Diamond, the Star of Asia, and my personal favorite, given that I'm hugely biased, the Candelabra from the Tourmaline Queen Mine in Southern California. Since 1991, one man has been the curator of the U.S. National Gem and Mineral Collection here at the Smithsonian, and that man is here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our show, Dr. Jeffrey Post. Jeff, how are you doing?
Hey, Brian. Good to see you. Welcome.
Well, thank you for being part of our show. Really thrilled that you could join us. I know we've been trying to work our schedules out for a long time, so it's truly an honor to have you on the program today.
Well, it's great to be here. I love watching these, and great to be part of this.
Well, thank you. Now, Jeff, usually what I do when I start the interviews is I like turning back the hands of time. And so my first question to you is really... Yeah, well, cue the music. Let's go.
Go. Okay, yeah.
So, Jeff, how did you begin getting interested in rocks and minerals? What was kind of your first exposure?
Oh, boy. You know, I think I'm like most of us that some point early on in our life, we just found rocks and minerals fascinating. My mom telling me that, I grew up in a small town near Madison, Wisconsin, and we lived near the edge of town. And so it was pretty easy to just go scrambling around the hills there And she said from the time she could remember, I came home with my pockets filled full of pebbles and rocks and little fossils, whatever I could find. And so there seemed to be some attraction early on, but there's one specific event that does kind of stand out in my mind. And that's when I was in fourth grade. And I had a fourth grade teacher, Miss Thousand, lovely lady, and she was teaching science to us. And she brought in one day for the science class a quartz crystal. It turns out a local rock shop owner had given her some mineral specimens to use in her class. So those kinds of things make a difference. And she pulled out this quartz crystal from Arkansas and started passing it around the class. And I just remember holding that quartz crystal in my hand and thinking, what in the world? And she's telling us this thing came out of the earth this way. And it just completely blew my mind. And, a quartz crystal, even now, when you pick every one of them, they're just beautiful things. And so it's just a fascinating object to a fourth grader. And it just all went from there. And I just found minerals fascinating. And I also loved chemistry. I think I had one of the world's great chemistry sets at the time when you could still do that kind of thing. And so the combination of chemistry and minerals and crystals just was impossible to resist. It was just an amazing thing.
Oh, I love it. I love the stories where an experience at school leads you to find this passion that you really get to pursue.
Well, it's a great age, and not to push, but it makes you realize that age, if you can do things that open up somebody's mind to the thrill, the excitement of the earth, the world. And, one of the projects that we've talked about here is how do we start doing this? Get quartz crystals in the hands of fourth graders or other mineral specimens, because that's the age you want to spark the interest. And I'm a living proof that it just changed my world when I held that quartz crystal in my hand.
Well, from that time that you held the first quartz crystal, when was the first time you visited a mineral museum, and which museum was it?
So the first mineral museum, well, let's see. I'm going to start with early on. My father took me to the Geology Museum at the University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
It's not the current one. It was an older version of that on Bascom Hill, and kind of a dusty old place, but absolutely fascinating. And, a couple of the people connected with the museum came out and talked to me, and it was just one of those great experiences.
Oh, that's great.
But then we went down to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. I grew up, near Madison, Wisconsin. So we actually took the train down, went to the Museum of Science and Industry, and spent the day there. And at the time, they had, what was to me the most impressive mineral collection I'd ever seen. And, it was just a great experience.
Well, kudos to your parents for encouraging you that.
Yeah.
So talk about your career path so we have your first exposure in school to that quartz that kind of followed your coming home with all the pebbles in your pockets. We have your visits to the museum in Wisconsin and then down in Chicago. How did you decide to pursue this as a career, and how did that eventually lead to your position at the Smithsonian?
Well, I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear it was not one grand plan. I've always thought back and thought, I never in that part of my life could have predicted a few years ahead to know where I was going to be. I just knew that I really enjoyed and really was interested in minerals and geology and chemistry. And so science was a given. And so I went to University of Wisconsin, Platteville, the mining school, and majored in geology and chemistry, and then ended up doing my graduate work in Arizona State. I mean, I knew I wanted to do research. I wanted to continue my love of minerals. And so Arizona State at the time had this great program, still have a great program, but this sort of combined chemistry department, geology department degree that they were offering was just exactly what I was looking for. And, from Wisconsin, going to Arizona wasn't such a bad idea either. And so I ended up doing my graduate work there and always assumed that I would end up in a university, professor, doing research, teaching, that type of thing, because that's the path that everybody around me was on. And it just seemed like the obvious direction. But then I did a postdoc at Harvard. And while I was there, I had a chance to get to know Carl Francis and Bill Metropolis and work with collections there. And, when you're a postdoc, you start applying for jobs because that's not a real job and you got to get one somewhere. And so I started looking at anything that was being advertised, and of course, looking at university positions. But then lo and behold, there was an announcement that the Smithsonian Institution was looking for a research mineralogist. And I had no clue that the Smithsonian Institution even hired research mineralogists. And so I read through the ad, and in realizing that I didn't know what was going to happen, so I applied to anything that sounded good. I sent in an application, and I got an offer to come down for an interview. And it was only at that interview, coming in the door and spending a couple of days in the department, did I realize that there was this whole other opportunity, this whole other world out there that I hadn't thought about. I mean, again, working with the collection at Harvard, it was just a great experience. And so suddenly here you are with the Smithsonian and the Smithsonian collection, and the department here and then is kind of like a small university department. There are a lot of scientists, there's the collections, there's laboratories. It all felt great. And here it is right down in the National Mall. And so it was just an exciting opportunity. And I remember going home from that interview telling my fiance at the time, my wife now, I said, I've never been anywhere where everybody I talked to so loved what they did, were so excited about their jobs. And so it got me kind of excited. But, I was, one of several people being interviewed. And so I continued my search for jobs, and suddenly got a call saying that they would like to offer me a position at the Smithsonian. Well, it was a complete change in path. Like I said, I had been thinking about universities, and I had a couple of job offers at universities, and I was trying to decide then what to do. And finally just realized that, there was never going to be a second chance to end up at a place like the Smithsonian.
Exactly.
And that had to be where we ended up. So my wife and I moved down here, and I've pinched myself ever since that I've got a job I could never have dreamed about.
Jeff, I love that. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel that same path is open to young people getting into the business now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great believer that any path is open. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, you basically, I think you prepare yourself to be ready for being able to do what it is you love to do. And in my case, I just took a lot of geology, took a lot of chemistry. It was what I wanted to do anyway, and figured that one way or the other, that would keep me on a path that would get me somewhere I wanted to go. And I think you've got to follow that passion. I mean, the goal for all of us, right, is find a job we love to do. And the old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
And so I think that's the path that we're always trying to follow. And I guess the one thing I always tell people, you just have to prepare yourself. You have to set yourself up to be ready for that opportunity when it comes along. So you take the classes, you study minerals, you study chemistry, you learn geology, and you get to know people, you build those networks. If an opportunity comes up, you do an internship or you do a summer program, you talk to people at museums, and you just don't know when that next opportunity is going to come along. And you just want to be sure that you're ready for it when it does come along.
Well, I love it. You had mentioned earlier the question, how do we get more quartzes into the hands of kids? And it touches on the whole, how do we encourage and prepare the next generation to come in and follow the footsteps that people like you are doing. And I'll tell you that I have a nephew who it sounds like he's very much at the beginning steps of what you just described as your career path. And the fact that you feel that this opportunity is still available to people, I think the advice that you're giving is very, very good. And I'm going to have him listen to this interview quite a few times, but it's great for anyone who's interested in pursuing this.
And Brian, there's always, jobs are, sometimes they're tight, sometimes less. There's always going to be great museums. There's going to be great collections. And there's all, the whole range of opportunities that intersect with collections, museums, research, universities, all those things. And I think that being open to exploring all those kinds of opportunities is part of what it is. And sometimes, places don't even know they need you until you're the one that shows up in front of them and shows them a direction they never even thought about.
Exactly. How do you feel about mentors, and who would you consider one of your early mentors? It almost sounds like Carl Francis was very important in guiding you.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate that all along I had, teachers that, I mean, this fourth grade teacher, I mean, she,
Yeah.
I remember, after I'd gotten all excited about quartz crystals and everything else, she and another teacher one afternoon, they put me in the car and they drove me over to this local rock shop in Verona, Wisconsin, and made sure that I had a chance to visit this place. And so, that wasn't something that was part of their job or they had to do. They just did it. And, that kind of thing, when my chemistry teacher in high school, I mean, he basically just said, do what you love. I mean, here, whatever you want to do, let's do it. And then college, I had professors that were extremely, we did a lot of field trips, a lot of work. I worked summers for a number of them. And it was an opportunity to, I think they appreciated somebody who was excited about these things. I appreciated the opportunity and their enthusiasm. Graduate school, I had Peter Busick, who I worked with at Arizona State. He was extremely supportive in, again, he kept saying, find something you're passionate about, do something you really love to do. And then Charlie Burnham was my mentor at Harvard. Along, Carl and Bill were at the museum, and that was incredible. But Charlie loved minerals as well. I mean, Charlie was incredibly focused on undergraduate teaching. He'd done great research, but he loved sharing his excitement about minerals with a very broad community. And that really resonated. The fact that, you want to share this enthusiasm and that it can connect to people in so many different ways. Even people who are not geology majors, who are not chemistry majors, find minerals to be interesting. And ultimately, it's something that connects them with the world and with the earth in a lot of different ways. And so, so all of those things were extremely helpful in preparing me, I guess, and keeping me focused on an opportunity that came along here at the Smithsonian.
I love it. Now, if I may, I would add that if you find something that you're passionate about, and I'm speaking to the young people out there, if you find something that you're passionate about, don't be afraid to express that passion. Don't be afraid to talk to people and let them know how you feel about it, because you may find that teacher who decides on her own time to take you to the local rock shop, and all of a sudden it really fuels the fire that's inside your heart.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Terrific.
And it's one of the great things I'll say about being, here at the Smithsonian. I mean, one of the challenges in my thinking at the time of do I take this job or not was I liked the idea of teaching. I like working with students. And so for me, the university was the setting to do that. And I remember when I was having, sort of going through those thoughts in my mind and talking to a couple of the people down here that became my future colleagues and expressing those concerns, they sort of put it back to me and said, where else in the world are you going to have as big an audience to talk about minerals to than at the Smithsonian, where you've got tens of thousands of people every day coming through the exhibitions, and there's all kinds of opportunities that you'll never have a bigger audience to share your love of minerals with than at the Smithsonian. And frankly, I hadn't thought about it that way. And suddenly it wasn't just a place to do research or a place to work with the collection, but it was a place to be able to share my enthusiasm with minerals with more people than I could ever have imagined.
So I get that. I see so often, especially at the TGMS show in Tucson, when you guys bring in exhibits and put it out there on the main floor, we say Smithsonian, and a lot of people they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that before. But when we tell them this is America's museum, all of a sudden you see a little kind of a click happen. You see a light go on that they understand now what the Smithsonian is.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So let's break it down for the viewers who may not be familiar. Smithsonian is a large organization. Yeah. So can you describe the differences between like the Smithsonian, which we refer in the mineral world, we just say the Smithsonian and everybody knows what that is. Yeah. But break down the Smithsonian, the National Museum of Natural History, and the Department of Mineral Sciences so that people kind of understand the hierarchy here.
Sure. And so the Smithsonian Institution is an institution that consists of about 20 museums right now, as well as a number of research centers and other smaller groups established all around the world. And so it's one of the largest research institutions, certainly the largest research museum in the world. And there are about 6,000 employees. And so here on the mall, we have most of the major museums that people tend to think about. So in addition to the Museum of Natural History, we also have the Air and Space Museum, Museum of American History, African art, Asian art, on and on and on. And so I think for a lot of our visitors coming to Washington, D.C. saying, we're going to visit the Smithsonian today, it's an overwhelming experience when suddenly they realize it's a whole bunch of museums. It's not just one building in one place. And so within the Smithsonian family, we are the largest of the museums, the most visited Museum of Natural History. We have about 140 million objects in our collections at the Museum of Natural History. So it's a huge organization. And we get about 7 million people a year coming into this building. And so it's, in addition to the rocks, the gems and minerals, there's also, of course, Ocean Hall and mammals and all areas of natural history. So being a natural history museum now within the Smithsonian, we cover all areas of natural history. So there are science departments in all those different areas. So we have, vertebrate, invertebrate zoology, departments of entomology, we have anthropology, we have paleobiology. We're mineral sciences. So we're the part of the museum that deals with the hard, non-living part of the earth. So we have 3 collections. We have the rock and ore collection, we have the gem and mineral collection, and we have the meteorite collection. And so then we have research scientists, laboratories associated with the study and the building of those collections, also making it possible to make sure those collections are available to other researchers all over the world. And so we're the part of the museum that is the hard, non-living part of the earth, basically. And of course, the exhibit hall that we have responsibility for is the Janet Annenberg Hooker Hall of Geology, Gems, and Minerals. And we're delighted to welcome tens of thousands of people a day in through that gallery. And so it's where we can share our excitement about minerals with the people coming into the galleries. And just as a little bit of, I'm always sort of tickled to hear that when they do the surveys about asking people when they leave the museum, what is it you most remembered about your visit to the Museum of Natural History? Right at the top of the list over and over again is the mineral collection. And
fantastic.
it's not the Hope Diamond, it's the minerals. And I think because as we've all had this experience, and I had this experience in 4th grade, when you see mineral crystals and realize that that's the way they formed in the earth, that's a mind-blowing experience for a lot of people. And so it's it's exciting to see all these people out here getting excited about minerals.
I love it. And Jeff, what about your personal interest in minerals? What do you do, like research? What are you passionate about? Kind of narrowing it down a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and so yes, the position, my position is as a research mineralogist curator here. And so it's an incredible place to do research. In addition to, I have the collection right here that everybody else in the world has to come and either look at or request specimens from. So for me, it's incredible to have this collection here. We've got world-class laboratories, amazing instrumentation that, again, we have access to. And so my area of research interest has been, I guess in general terms, I would say environmental mineralogy. It's focusing on minerals that occur at that interface between the solid earth and then everything else on the earth, between the rocks that are between the earth and the atmosphere, between the earth and river systems and lakes, between living systems and the earth. So it's minerals that make up soils and sediments that occur on the surface. Things like clay minerals and iron oxides, manganese oxides are a particular passion for me. And I know that having sort of rubbed shoulders with mineral collectors for much of my life, that manganese oxides are not always the most appreciated minerals out there in the mineral kingdom. In fact, some of my colleagues like to refer to me as having gone to the dark side of mineralogy. But I do get a certain amount of pleasure in illuminating a lot of people who simply like to refer to them as manganese oxides, or sometimes as pyrolusite, or sometimes as solamoline, and realize that in fact there's a whole family of minerals out there that have turned out to be quite interesting and in fact affect very dramatically the chemistry of many of the environments in which we live. And so looking at what these minerals are, the chemical properties, how they interact with groundwater, with soils, how they hold on to various kinds of heavy metals. These are the kinds of studies that I've been interested in. And so we use things like synchrotron X-ray diffraction, where we can take manganese oxide minerals and we can then carry out chemical reactions. We can actually flow fluids over these mineral specimens that contain various trace metals or impurity metals. And then by collecting X-ray diffraction patterns at the synchrotron in real time, we can literally follow the chemical reactions that are taking place and look at how the minerals themselves are changing, how their structures are responding to these chemical reactions, and then try to use that to model what's happening in natural systems. And so I have to tell you, I did bring a few of my favorite manganese oxides here. If you would like to, these aren't the kinds of things you'll see displayed prominently at a lot of mineral shows, but my guess is that most people might actually recognize some of these because they're the kinds of things we bump into in everyday life. In fact, manganese oxides are quite prevalent. And so it's one of the reasons that we're interested in them. So I'm going to grab my camera and move.
Even though Eloise's microphone's off, I can hear her squealing in joy.
So, all right. So I'm gonna look here. We've got right here this sort of collection of browns to blacks. This is one of the problems with manganese oxides. They have this sort of range of gaudy colors from kind of a dark brown to a dark black. And so in the center, one of my favorite specimens, this is one that was handed to me years ago by a former colleague.
Could you hold that up a little bit, Jeff?
Yeah,
so it's in the center of the camera. There we go.
Thank you very much. You're gonna have to guide me a little bit here. So this is an ocean manganese nodule. And this is one that's been cut in half. You can see there's a central nucleus that the manganese oxides formed around. It's a nice round nodule. There are literally millions and millions of these things paving the world's oceans floors. And they're an incredible resource, a source of manganese. They also tend to contain high concentrations of cobalt, nickel, and copper. But there's a huge amount of research being done, still trying to understand where these metals come from, how they form on the ocean, all those, what the mineralogy is, very complicated. You see very fine, the very finely layered structure here with various manganese oxides and iron oxides. And so, that's a research project right in itself. And then
Jeff, what is the nodule made out of, the center nodule?
It's a limestone clast.
Okay.
Yep. So then, some people might be more have seen things like these dendrites that are found on surfaces of other rocks in a variety of different rock formations around the world. And, in most museum collections or on exhibitions, you'll often see these things labeled as pyrolusite. And I can tell you absolutely that I've never seen yet a single dendrite anywhere that is pyrolusite. They typically tend to be things like cryptomeline or hollandite or todorokite, something like that. In fact, this one is todorokite. It's from a quarry in Maryland. Those of you in the western part of the United States will remember seeing things like this dark colored coating that covers many of the open surfaces of rocks out in desert environments. They call rock varnish or desert varnish. And this dark colored coating is black because of manganese oxides. And so there's been a lot of research trying to understand how these coatings form. Are these manganese oxides formed biogenically, perhaps by precipitation from bacteria associated with these coatings? Are they simply inorganic processes? There's usually iron oxides and clays as well. The chemistry is not at all related to the substrate, so it's something that forms on the surface, related to water as well. So interesting problem that still isn't completely solved. And then you just get things that are I think kind of funky looking, like this guy right here. This is a typical sort of manganese oxide nodule. This is from a mine in the Shenandoah Valley area in Virginia. And it's mostly, so this is something that typically might have been called selameline. Well, it turns out it's mostly cryptomeline and lithophorite. So, and then one of my recent favorites is this little guy from Brazil. So we have a quartz crystal here. So, okay, well,
love that.
Cool. But then it's got this little hairy coating on the top of it that it was labeled in the collection as simply where I got it as manganese oxide, but it turns out that it is really nicely example of hollandite, and then on the surface are beautiful little hedral crystals of lithiophoreite. So turns out to be kind of an interesting specimen. So these are the kinds of things that I spend a lot of my time thinking about, a lot of times associated with acid mine drainage or former mining sites where you get concentrations of manganese building up in the groundwater. And so then there's a problem of mitigating that because you can't have real high concentrations ending up in local streams. And so they have to come up with ways of removing it. So that involves knowing the mineralogy and the chemistry and figuring out how to do those things. So we've been working with some sites up in Pennsylvania, former coal mining sites, to do that. So it's a interesting problem. And then on days when I finally, I need something else to do, and Eloise will remember this because she and I worked on these things. We also work on defects in diamonds sometimes. And so we've done things like doing detailed analyses of the Hope diamond and working on pink diamonds and other colored diamonds. And so it's been having a hard time getting my camera back here. Sorry about that.
Well, I'm not going to worry too much about the camera right now because I want to tell the viewers that you are obviously not on the exhibit floor. You are in what's called the Blue Room, named because of the color of the walls and the carpet. And this is an area that is not open to the public. It is it's kind of your vault area. So I'm going to ask you if you can describe to our viewers a little bit about what the Blue Room is, why it's significant, and then let's look at some of the things that you were teasing us in that last segment.
Okay. So yes, I'm sitting in our high security storage area in the mineral collection, and it is where we have brought about 20,000 specimens out of our collection. So just to give you some context, the next room is the general reference collection that used primarily for research, either by us or we will loan specimens to scientists all over the world, and that's a big part of what we do here is to make that collection available. And we have about 375,000 mineral specimens as part of that overall collection.
Wow.
We have taken then a subset of about 20,000 specimens, brought them into this higher security area because we consider these to be the more valuable or the more special, more irreplaceable specimens, not necessarily things we want scientists knocking little bits and chips off of, unless there is some project that is so special and so important that they can convince us that this is the specimen they need. And so we are in this special space. It's high security. In addition to your camera, I've got about 3 or 4 other cameras on me right now. And it is also back around the corner where we have our gem vault. And so that is our highest security area. You'll see in the cabinets behind me, the larger specimens that do not easily fit into drawers. And so that's the reason they're in those cabinets, so that we don't have to stuff them into a drawer someplace. And then you'll see that there are a bunch of drawers below the cabinets, but I'm also going to give you a quick kind of a pan around the room a little bit to see that we also have a central table and then a lot of other drawers that are our primary storage for this vault area.
Now, that table that you just showed us was also very significant because, as you were explaining earlier, that's where you had a bunch of research equipment set up when you were doing some in-depth analysis of the Hope Diamond.
Yes. So this, being that we have this high security area, it gives us the opportunity to do research on then valuable objects that require that security. And so for us, one example of that is, of course, we have the Hope Diamond here, arguably one of the most valuable objects in the world. We have 45.5 carat blue diamond, and you can look on your own at what blue diamonds are selling for in the market. They're on at auction these days to give you an idea of the value. So anything that we do with the Hope Diamond is by necessity something that has to happen with very high security. And so the opportunity to do some work on that diamond has come up a couple of times. We've had some research projects because, think of the Hope Diamond as being a kind of gem, some sort of a special jewelry piece. But in fact, it is also one of the rarest objects produced by the Earth. And we now know these blue diamonds, like the Hope Diamond, are what they call ultra deep diamonds, and are formed at somewhere perhaps as much as 650 miles below the surface, much deeper than other diamonds. And so the fact that there are very few such diamonds that one can actually study means that each one becomes an important resource. And so it's a great scientific object as well as an incredible gemstone. And so we've had a couple of studies where we brought the Hope Diamond back here. And of course, you don't take the Hope Diamond to other laboratories or to other scientists. Everything comes here. So this room where we are now was filled with scientific instruments. We filled, with spectrometers and microscopes and all the instruments that we wanted to use to do the study. And so at the end of the day, when the public is out of the museum, we could bring the diamond back here. We actually have a jeweler come in, take the diamond out of the setting, could spend the evening and through the night doing the research that we wanted to do, and then get the jeweler back in the morning, put it back into the setting, get it back on exhibit. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, when the public shows up, it's back on exhibit. And so that's the kind of, so having this very secure space allows us to do that kind of research because, as I said, the Hope Diamond's not going to go anywhere else for that kind of study. It has to be done here. And in Eloise, when she was here as a postdoc, one of the studies we did was actually measuring the amount of boron in the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is blue because of trace amounts of boron, but there have been very few studies of measuring the amount of boron in natural diamonds because, again, nobody wants to give you their blue diamond to do those kinds of studies. And we had in the department a time-of-flight SIMS, time-of-flight secondary ion mass spectrometer instrument that one of its capabilities was to measure boron in very trace amounts. And so with a lot of preparation, we were able to actually do that measurement in our department here under high security and determine that about the average amount of boron in the Hope Diamond is about 0.5 part per billion. And that's one of the very few measurements that's ever been done on a natural blue diamond. So it is something we like to continue to learn from, the poke and prod, but the laboratories, the high security, everything set up here gives us this unique opportunity to do those kind of studies.
Fantastic. So speaking of the Hope Diamond, I know if you Google Hope Diamond, you're going to find all kinds of stories about it online, but you have to have a bunch of favorite stories about the Hope Diamond. Can you share one with us that maybe the general public doesn't know about?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always, every time we do something with the Hope Diamond, there's a certain amount of, nervousness, I guess I would say, and excitement because it is a valuable thing. And, you hold this 1-inch diamond in your hand and you think, oh my gosh, all of the history, all of the, interest, everything. And boy, you don't want to be the one to drop it or break it or whatever it is. And so there's always a lot of thought that goes into working on the Hope Diamond. And, there have been a couple times when we've had to, travel with the Hope Diamond. One of the stories, we had to take the diamond to New York, and of course, the travel for this is always an incredibly complicated process, and we ended up with about 3 different versions of how it was going to go to New York, and no one knew until it actually left the museum which of those we were going to actually use, and then it turns out that we had a replica and we had a diamond. And even when I got to New York, I didn't know which one I had with me. And so it turns out that I ended up with the replica and our head of security ended up with the Hope Diamond. And so he came up by train, I came up by airplane, and who would have known, right? So it's, but yeah, and so these are, fortunately, we don't have to do that very often, think about moving. And this time it was actually being prepared for the new exhibition. And we had some repair work on the setting we had to do, some cleaning, things like that. And it was a chance to do that at Harry Winston's. Of course, Harry Winston, the jeweler, was the person that gave the diamond to us in 1958. So going back up there to have that work done seemed to make good sense. It was an opportunity to also show it up there for a day. And so it was, one of these special things. One other story I'll just share with the Hope Diamond, and it's one of the, we mentioned about research back here in the Blue Room. One of the really exciting opportunities for us here, and for me certainly, was a few years ago. You may remember hearing in the news about another blue diamond that came up for auction, and it was called the Wittelsbach diamond. And
Right.
it's a historically famous blue diamond, about 2/3 the size of the Hope diamond, but in many ways sort of an interesting parallel history to the Hope diamond, coming out of India. It was in, crown jewels in Europe. And so a lot of people had speculated for a long time, could these two diamonds somehow be related, because they had both come out of India about the same time. This was in the 1600s. One ended up in Spain, the Hope diamond ending up in France. And then they sort of separated, went their parallel paths. But then, into hundreds of years of history, no other big blue diamonds ever were found in Spain, in India. And so the chance that these two stones would come out about the same time fueled the speculation. Could they be related? Might they have been cut from the same original piece of rough? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the Wittelsbach had sort of disappeared. And so, we know where the Hope diamond was. It was here, but the Wittelsbach people hadn't seen for decades. And then suddenly it came up for auction, and it was purchased by Lawrence Graff. And GIA was working on it up in New York, and it was at Graff's in New York, and we approached Lawrence Graff, and he was excited about the idea of putting the Wittelsbach and the Hope diamond next to each other, and for the first time in history, actually having a chance to look at them side by side. And so the Wittelsbach came down here. We had half of GIA and other scientists packed into our blue room with all of our instruments, and I brought the Hope diamond off exhibit and came back, and I took that back into the vault. And I have to say, the Wittelsbach was there, the Hope diamond was there, and because of security, everybody who was going to work on it, they were all waiting out in the conference room for the diamonds to both be here so that we could then bring them in. And so when I was back all alone back in the vault, I put the Hope diamond down, and I opened up the box with the Wittelsbach, and I put them side by side, and it was the first time anybody had ever seen them side by side. And it was just, you go, only here. I mean, oh my God, what an amazing thing. And then we spent the night studying these two diamonds, and despite their similarities, it turns out that there was very good scientific evidence to indicate that they could not have been cut from the same original piece of rough. And so it was an opportunity to answer that question that only could have happened here. And the Wittelsbach was here on exhibit then with the Hope diamond for a few months. It then it went back. It was sold, and who knows if we'll ever have a chance to look at it again. So
I love it. So your eyes were the first eyes to see those two stones next to each other.
Well, and that's when you go, I got like the greatest job in the world, right?
Totally.
Because where else? And and just one of the things that I've often said is that every morning I come into work, I'm riding the train into work, and I'm thinking something exciting is going to happen today. And it's part of just being at a place like the Smithsonian, the Natural History Museum, our Department of Mineral Sciences, and with the things that we work on here, being in Washington, D.C., you walk in every day, something interesting is going to happen. It might be talking to someone, it might be seeing something, it might be whatever, but it's never a dull day.
Couldn't agree more. Now, I can't imagine you ever wanting to leave your job, but I understand that you are retiring next year. What are you going to do with your time?
Yeah, it's inevitable, isn't it? One of the things that we can't do is stop getting older, I guess. But, I'm never going to stop my interest in minerals. And part of retiring is at some point, you got to just put that pin on the calendar and say, okay, it's time for me to start thinking about the things. It's time for other people to start doing this job. And, I've always said, and, I want to leave here before others want me to leave. Although maybe I've already overstayed that, I'm not sure. But we've got great people here in the department. We've hired some people in the last few years, and I see nothing but a really bright future here. I'm very excited about that, and so it's a good time. It's the right time to work with the people that are in the department, with their enthusiasm, their new creativity, the energy that they have. That I'm sorry to say, when you get later in your 60s, you just lose a little bit of that. It's exciting to see that, and so I'm hoping to continue to make retirement kind of a transition, so that I'm not going to stop loving minerals and not stop communicating with people here. I will continue as a research associate emeritus. We may not live here in the DC area, but I'll hopefully come back here fairly regularly. and hopefully stay in communication with, as much as I can be helpful, but also still follow spend a little more time doing actual research on some things I want to finish up, to, continue to really think about minerals in a way that maybe my job sometimes didn't allow me to do because it was a job. And so now I can do the things that I just want to do because they're really fun to do. And hopefully continue the relationships. I mean, the hardest part about retiring is thinking about all the people you've worked with and the people you've enjoyed spending time with, the people I see in Tucson and other shows, and hoping that, a lot of those relationships will continue because, we still all enjoy talking about the same things and still have a lot of the same interests. And, but, it's not something that you do every day. It's my first time retiring, and so it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But yeah, it's exciting and a little bit scary at the same time.
Well, fantastic. We look forward to seeing you for many, many more years in the mineral circuit after you've retired. So
I hope
stay healthy and keep showing up.
Yeah, I hope so, Brian. Thank you.
Hey, so you are in the Blue Room. This is a very rare opportunity. So I'm going to ask Raquel to go ahead and fire off the poll. And while she's doing that, maybe you could take the camera off and start showing us some of the things that you've brought out.
All right. Tell you what, I've got a few things. Let me do one thing first, and that is, and Brian, kind of guide me with this camera here, because as you can tell, I'm not necessarily all that adept with that. But I'm just going to, you've been looking at a few of these cabinets behind me, and I'm just going to try to give you a sense of what's in some of these cabinets. Now, they're not arranged in any particular order because, it's storage. So we're kind of fitting things in where we have room to fit them. And then, you're always acquiring new things. And, so a lot of times people ask, well, what are these things that you're hiding back here in the Blue Room? And, it's not that we're hiding them here, but everything at a museum this size is a bit of a process, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to unplug myself here. And so when we get new things, I can't just walk out into the exhibit hall and plunk it down and say, okay, I'm going to put it here and write myself a label, and there it is. It's always working with our exhibits team to make changes in the exhibit, update things. We try to do that all the time, but we're acquiring new things that don't always, get out on exhibit immediately. But we try, our goal is to keep our very best things on exhibit as much as possible. And so what's back here might be second best or equal to what's out there, or in many cases, as I say, new acquisitions. But we're always, our goal is, as our exhibits people like to remind me, we're not the only part of the museum that needs their help. But as I keep telling them, we're the part of the museum that tends to get most of the people. But so we're trying to get new, like here's a new azurite, just point out here, one of the ones from Apius, that we have a donor group that's been very generous in helping us to acquire some specimens for the collection. This is one that they helped us to acquire a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic. And so obviously the pandemic time, the museum was closed, slowed us down a little bit. So we were not able to work to get as many things out on exhibit as quickly as possible, but we're trying to catch up with that now as much as possible. But, it's working with a team. We have, really, talented exhibits people, and they want everything to be done in the right way. And so the other side of that is showing them, or is working with them and letting them help us do that. So anyway, just to give you a little bit of an overview of what's back here. And then, as we mentioned, we have a lot of drawers. Tell you what I'm going to do, Brian. If this works, I'm going to just open the door here to the vault area.
Oh, I thought you were going to type in the code for all of us.
No, I can't.
007 is the code.
Yeah, there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. But this is just a peek out into our reference collection area.
Wow.
And so this is the mineral reference collection, just outside the door. All these drawers. Okay, I can't.
I know you're juggling a bunch of things, but is it possible to open one of the drawers?
Well, then I got to get back into our vault. Okay, well, we'll try this. Okay, here we go. All right, so here we are. I'm going to set my computer down for a second, my laptop. Let's see, this drawer says biotite. Okay, well, what the heck. So here we are. So this is the reference collection. And so these are specimens that we make available for research purposes. And any scientist anywhere in the world connected to a research organization can request specimens for their projects. And most of the time they email us with a brief description of their research, and then we will try to find the specimens that will best fit their needs, and then we send them to them. We charge nothing for that. We just ask in return that they share data with us.
Share the data.
Return any unused material, and if they publish these, they use our specimen numbers so that others can actually follow up on that. And one of the valuable things about collections like this one, and there are a lot of great collections in the world, obviously, they're not only a resource for now. I mean, in my career, it just boggles my mind when I think about all of the new technology, the instrumentation, the questions, the kinds of projects that have come along that I could never have imagined, when I was a graduate student. And so we keep going back to these same mineral specimens with better tools, smarter people, new technologies, new questions, and keep reinterrogating them. And so collections like this make sure then that these specimens are preserved so that when that next generation of scientists comes along and says, we want to go back to that same specimen that Post worked on and only did a half-bit job on it and really figure out what's going on, they can actually find that specimen, do the work, and then add their new layer of information to what we know about that. And then knowing that 500 years from now or 1,000 years from now, it'll still be here. So those next super bright mineralogists, centuries from now, will still be able to go back and learn, because it's still the minerals that hold the stuff, the information. Databases are great, all that kind of stuff, all essential. But ultimately, it's the minerals that are the capsules that hold the information. And
that's exactly true. Sometimes you don't know what you're looking for, and that question will come later in the process.
And very often, most often, we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't even know what questions to ask sometimes.
So, Jeff, it looks like your reference collection is quite extensive. Are there holes in your reference collection that you feel need to be filled?
Of course. We're always looking to add. I mean, think of how diverse mineralogically the world is. Mm-hmm. And, there are places every day where they're digging holes in the ground, or there's something new that people are learning about. And, it's impossible to get everything, but we're always looking for what's new, what's interesting. And, one of the directions I think that we have to be better at doing with collections like these is really working more closely with the scientific community, with the researchers, so that we're building the collections in ways that we hope are going to be most useful for the science. Because, for me, just to assume that I know what everybody out there is working on and that what they think is going to be important for the future, that's probably a pretty naive way of thinking. I don't know why I have so much problem with this camera, but you. Okay. And so I think for, one of the strategies for the future that we've been talking about here is we've got to get scientists and organizations, and science organizations more engaged with helping us to know how do we build these collections to be most effective for the future. I mean, we're always going to be looking for great minerals. These are the Earth's great treasures. We want to share these with the public. We want to preserve them. That's always going to be part of our mission. But, there are a lot of minerals out there. There's a lot of focus these days on things like climate change, critical minerals, sustainability, environmental mineralogy. And these aren't always the sexiest, most glamorous minerals. Clay minerals and manganese oxides, and iron oxides, and, biogenically produced minerals, all these things that may not ever show up on a table in Tucson, but in fact are going to be critically important for the kinds of research that people want to do in the future to better preserve and to better understand our planet. And so I think we need to get more input sometimes, a broader set of inputs as to what kinds of materials we should be preserving so that they are available for scientists in the future. And I think, that's going to be a really important part of the discussion for mineral curators all over, and hopefully amongst themselves to reach out and try to get that kind of guidance, because we also need the enthusiasm and the support of the scientific community to continue to build and then to value these collections, to realize just what an important scientific resource they actually are.
Absolutely. So, Jeff, we are coming to the end of the hour, but I know that you have some things that you pulled out that you have on the table. So why don't we take some time and go over those?
Okay, so you're right. So one of the, as I mentioned earlier on, our gem vault is back here as well. And for a couple of reasons, both, well, security and then there's no Wi-Fi in there. We can't actually go in there. But I did bring out just a few things to give you an idea of what we have in the gem vault. And so the gem collection, of course, is just a subset of the mineral collection, but it's one that, has its own particular cachet and interests. And maybe what I'll do is just hold up a couple of things here.
Sure.
So first of all, I want to show you, this is a recent gift to the collection. This is a Tsavorite garnet, and this is a 116.7 carat Tsavorite from Marilani that was donated to us recently. Bruce Bridges and the Somewhere in the Rainbow collection donated this to us. And this is truly one of the great Tsavorites that I've ever seen, cut by Victor Tuzlakov, and is hopefully going to get out on exhibit sometime this coming spring. We've got plans right now because it is just a fabulous Tsavorite and just a great colored gemstone. Amazing thing.
Can you move it a little backwards, Jeff? So we can... There you go.
Ah, okay, there you go.
I think we get better focus. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah, okay, very good. Beautiful stone. And then a little bit larger. This is a morganite from Brazil.
Jeez, that's incredible.
Buzz Gray. I'm sure many people have heard of Buzz Gray, know of his great cutting skills. And so this is one that he's cut about 1,377 carats. And so beautiful, beautiful classic morganite, peachy pink color. And, these kinds of stones obviously are not necessarily great for jewelry, but for exhibit display, it's wonderful. I mean, we're always looking for anything we can put on exhibit that gets people to slow down just a little bit and go, whoa, I got to stop and look at that. And
right.
Gemstones do that. And, the gems are a great way to get people into our collection and to thinking about minerals. I mean, gems are something that people can kind of relate to. They know they've got a human history, a story, there's some value, they're beautiful. All of those are things that bring people in the door. Brian, a long time ago, we kind of realized if you put a title outside the exhibit that says geology, you don't get a lot of people walking in through that door.
Right, they pass by it.
But if you put Hope Diamond National Gem Collection, you get a whole bunch of people coming in the door. And our surveys have found about 85% of those people go on into the mineral collection. And so gems are a great way to get people thinking about, what these things are. Everybody then wants to know, where do these things come from? And obviously minerals is the big part of the story. And so gems are a great way for us to sort of focus attention, get people a little bit excited. Here, I'm also going to show you something. This is normally on exhibit, but it's back here because we're getting a new mount made for it. This is a necklace that was given by Sir Thomas Cullinan. So everybody's heard of the Cullinan diamond, the largest diamond ever found. Thomas Cullinan owned that mine. And this was given by Thomas Cullinan to his wife in about 1915 or so. And the family story was that Thomas Cullinan, when he opened the mine, said to his wife, let me dig this mine. I'm going to find you a big diamond. And sure enough, he found the Cullinan diamond, over 3,000 carats. But for political reasons and others, that diamond ended up in the hands of the King of England. And so this was sort of the consolation prize, this necklace to his wife. And there are 9 blue diamonds in this necklace. And so the premier mine, the Cullinan mine now, is known for being one of the major sources of blue diamonds in the world. And these are some of the very earliest blue diamonds that would have come out of that mine. And so the largest of the 9 is the 2.3 carat Cullinan diamond at the bottom. And so this is...
Jeff, could you bring that a little closer to the camera?
Yep. So this was an Edwardian design.
That's beautiful.
1915. It was passed down then through the Cullinan family, and the granddaughter ultimately sold it to a jeweler in California, And Steve Silver then donated it to the collection.
And how many times have you put that on, and how does it look?
You know, it's probably not even going to fit around my neck, but I think I do sort of remember Eloise actually wearing it once, as just because we wanted a picture of it being worn. So
I have no doubt.
And I'm telling you what, you definitely want to, you'd rather see it on her than on me. So, and one of the things that I want, so here's one of these things that people love it or they hate it. But these have traveled around to, we have an affiliations program, it's called the Smithsonian, where we have affiliate museums all over the country. And being an affiliate gives you sort of a little bit of a fast track for borrowing specimens and having other programming with the Smithsonian. So we had a collection of gem mineral related things that were put together that traveled to a lot of affiliate museums over a couple of decades. And one of the really popular items in that was this jeweled camel. In fact, we have two of them. And it's a little bit much, perhaps, but you know, everywhere they went, people just really loved. Look at that face. Come on.
Jeff, could you pull that a little bit more to your left so it's kind of center of the screen? There we go.
Yeah. And so this is an ivory camel that's all decked out in rubies and diamonds and emeralds and sapphires. And this was made in Hong Kong in the early 1960s, probably something for the high-end tourist trade. Very typical of the gold work. The very brightly colored gemstones were very popular in those workshops at that time. And one of my favorite things about these, and I think, is you notice it's carrying these treasure chests. And so, of course, the little treasure chest comes off.
Oh, wow.
And then when you open up a treasure chest, what's inside? But, of course, treasure.
Fantastic.
So somebody had a lot of fun making this, and I'm sure somebody enjoyed this, but you got to admit, it would look kind of good on a table next to your bed at night or something at your place, right? Fit your decor.
Wouldn't be bad.
So it's kind of fun. You know, you never know what you're going to run into. And this was something, these were donated to us in the 1970s. And, you know, they've become the focus of a traveling exhibit that went to dozens and dozens of places around the United States and served a really great purpose. It got people in the door, it got people to start thinking about gems, about minerals, about where these things come from, what they are, the stories. And that's what it's all about, right? We want these things to inspire people's awe and excitement. And minerals and gems do that probably better than I would say anything else in our museum. You know, people walk up and we have these pyrite specimens, the beautiful cubes from Spain, and we have a stack of those that John White got when he was here as curator. It's a beautiful specimen, and it's right front and center in our mineral gallery. And you know, people walk in and they look at that, and you can just see in their head trying to get wrapped around the idea that something like that came out of the earth as it is there. And still, I mean, I like to go out to the hall sometimes. I'll walk up to a group of kids or family around there. I'll say, you know, that's the way it came out of the earth. And they look at me like, no way.
Yeah.
And there's this sense of, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. And then they can't get enough. They're just running around from one case to the next going, you mean this came out of the earth? And suddenly the earth is a magical place. And that's what we want to do. I mean, you know, they always say, what's the point of an exhibit if you're not changing people? And the mineral gallery changes people. If people come through that gallery and they walk out the other end and they don't think of the earth the same way again. And that's what we're hoping to do. You want people to be a little bit excited about it, to learn about it, and go, well, the next time, you know, maybe I'll read that science article, or maybe I'll think about some of these other things, or the next trip I take, I'm going to find out more about what this is I'm looking at. And so you want to get people excited about the earth. And minerals, you know, we know it does that. But now they know too. Minerals do that in a great way.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people think of science as a very dry subject, but then when you show them minerals and you've maybe led them to the minerals through an exhibit of gemstones or jewelry, then they come away with those eyes just wide open, and the world never's the same again.
Yeah. I mean, I read someplace recently, so one of the great emotions in the world is the sense of awe.
Yes.
There's almost nothing that gets, you know, that will connect with us. And part of the strength of this sense of awe is it's one that can be shared among a group of people, that a whole bunch of people together can feel that same sense of emotion, and suddenly people are curious, they want to know, and it's like this great opening to people then wanting to understand what it is they're looking at. And mineral, I mean, what better thing to create a sense of awe in people than an exhibition of beautiful and interesting and spectacular minerals and gems. And
Absolutely.
so we're a little bit perhaps arrogant here, or a little bit snooty about thinking that, this is the part of the museum that really has that effect on people almost more than anyone. But, and I don't want to minimize the rest of the museum. It's great. But, we are a little biased, and we do believe that minerals have this power to really intersect with people and to change them. And that's part of what has made, my time here, you look back and you go, what is the really rewarding part of it? I mean, there's obviously building the collection and all the things that we've done, there's research, but, it's realized that every single day we've had tens of thousands of people walking through our mineral gallery. And even if some small percentage of those people walk out of here feeling a little different, feeling changed, feeling those sense of excitement, that's an incredibly powerful effect you've had on a lot of people. And so, it's been a great place to be to do something like that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And Eloise is holding up your latest book. Tell us about that.
This was my pandemic project. Yeah. Well, when you've been here long enough, you accumulate a lot of information, a lot of stories about a lot of the pieces in our collection. And when you walk around our gem collection, especially, one of the things you realize is that every label has a name of a donor on it, has a person. And, so each of these gemstones has a story. Each of these pieces, there's a people connection to it. And so the focus of this book is more, it's the gems, obviously, and the jewelry pieces and their story, but it's the stories of the people. And, it's one of the reasons why I think we value gems is that not only are they beautiful, but there's a sense of immortality, of permanence to these things. And so they accumulate stories, and these stories are always with them. And so for a lot of people, a certain amount of immortality, their story is only known because of the gemstones that they had and they owned. So I took my time when I was home during the pandemic, and we had just built this archive of all of our digital information, and so put together the stories of the pieces in our collection, focusing on the people who owned them, sort of how they ended up at the Smithsonian, what their stories are, and put that together with the pictures we had. And so this is sort of the story of the stories of our gem collection.
Well, Jeff, it's the human stories that bind us all. It's the common denominator that we all have. And so you can look at a beautiful gemstone, but when you start learning the history and the story behind the people involved with that gemstone, then it really starts taking on kind of a different picture. And in a way, what we're doing here with Mineral Talks Live is we're doing something similar to what you're doing with the book there. We are trying to capture the stories and let people know who these names are in our field.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, just obviously one of our most obvious examples of this is the Hope Diamond. You wonder, what is it that brings millions of people into our museum each year to see the Hope Diamond? Why, what's the big deal? It's a big blue diamond. Well, most people are surprised to see it's a blue diamond, and most people think it's bigger than it actually is. But in fact, it's the story, right? It's the whole history that diamond represents, from India to King Louis XIV, to the French Revolution, to England, and Lord, Francis Hope, and then, Cartier and Neville Walsh McLean, all these people whose lives are intricately associated with this diamond. And you look at this diamond, and all of that comes into focus. And
exactly.
So, and much of it we only know of, or many of the people associated we only know of because of that diamond. And so those stories get carried along. And the other thing that's sort of exciting about it is you go, well, okay, the story isn't over. This diamond's going to be around a long, long time. And we're hoping that the end of the story is, and forever and ever, was at the Smithsonian Institution. But forever and ever is a long time, right? And that diamond, it's just sitting there kind of watching, waiting, and, whatever happens to it, it'll still be the Hope Diamond. It'll still be the same thing. And, it's both a participant and a great observer to history. And so gemstones bring that along with them. And that's part of what this book was sort of designed to do, was to remind, to sort of talk about the stories that come along with the gemstones.
Exactly. And I would submit that one of the stories that makes the Hope Diamond so compelling is the story of the curse behind it, because that is uniquely human.
Well, and Brian, if you want to ask me what is the most common question that you've ever been asked as you've been here at the Smithsonian Institution, I will probably, well, two things. One is, how much is the Hope Diamond worth, and is the Hope Diamond actually cursed?
Right. Okay.
Those are the two. And so, yeah, how much is it worth? I don't know. And what is, is it cursed? No. But, the curse is clearly a big motivator for a lot of people wanting to walk in and look at this diamond and go, what in the world is this all about? I mean, and so, yeah, that's all part of one of the stories that becomes part of its history.
I absolutely love it.
Brian, quick fire 5 questions.
Yes. Okay. So, Jeff, I'm being urged to go on to our quick fire 5 questions.
All right.
So this is the way that this works. I have 5 questions that I'm going to ask you. Each question has 2 answers, and I'm going to read both the answers to you. You tell me which of the 2 answers you resonate with most strongly.
Okay.
And the audience has already gone through and they guessed what your answer will be. All of your answers are correct. We're going to see how correct the audience is.
All right. Sounds like fun. Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 1. Your preferred group of minerals, manganese oxides or clay minerals?
Manganese oxides. Come on.
Manganese oxides. Question number 2. A good place to retire, Maryland or Wisconsin?
Oh, boy. They're both good places, but right now, because of my family connections, I'd have to say Wisconsin would edge out Maryland.
Absolutely. Your preferred working spot, at the X-ray lab at the Smithsonian or at a gem and mineral show in Tucson?
Oh, boy, that is really tough because they're both great. I have to say I get less, in some ways I've had less time to be sitting at my X-ray diffractometer in the lab than I've had to even spend at mineral shows. And so, I don't know. I'd have to say the lab. There is something about every time you put a mineral on that diffractometer and you get an answer that's pretty darn exciting.
Love it.
But it's a close toss-up.
Sure. No, these aren't easy questions.
Oh, yeah.
Question number 4, your preferred dish, grilled lobster or pork ribs?
Pork ribs.
There was no hesitation there.
Well, I mean, they're, again, 2 great things, but I don't know, hard to pass up grilled pork ribs. Yeah.
Well, 2 great things that taste great together even.
They do. Well, you could do that. Surf and turf, right? Why not?
Surf and turf. Let's do it.
I think the answer is all of the above, right, on that one. Yeah,
okay. And question number 5, your preferred gem, a 45.52 carat blue diamond. It's potentially cursed. Yeah. Or a 23.10 carat ruby.
Oh, boy. Well, since we have one of each of those, yeah. I'm gonna go with the obvious one, the diamond, only because there's just so much that goes along with that stone that just makes it different than everything else. So yeah, that's the one you can never replace.
Absolutely, I hear you. Okay, Eloise, are we ready to see how our audience did?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Question number 1, preferred group of minerals, manganese oxides or clay minerals? Jeff, with no hesitation, went for the manganese oxides. What did our audience say?
97% said manganese oxide. They're lesson.
Wow.
Right. People know me. Okay, cool.
That's right. Okay.
Or they just love manganese oxides. I think that's the answer.
Exactly.
I'm guessing they're going to be selling for a whole lot more at Tucson coming up.
See? Yeah.
Everybody's going to be looking for them now. Okay. Yeah.
I think we've discovered a new subgroup of mineral collectors now.
There are a lot of the people out there collecting those. So I think there's an open niche there. Okay.
There weren't until now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question number 2, a good place to retire, Maryland or Wisconsin? Jeff obviously went with Wisconsin. What did our audience say?
Yep. Wisconsin, 64%.
Okay.
Wow, nice, nice.
Easier if the Packers were doing better this year, but okay. Yeah.
Okay, preferred preferred working spot: X-ray lab at the Smithsonian or the Gem and Mineral Show in Tucson.
Well, you know what?
Jeff?
Yep, 79% X-ray lab at the X-ray lab.
Wow.
Right.
See?
Okay, that's 3 out of 3 so far. Question number 4, preferred dish: grilled lobster or pork ribs? Jeff, with really zero hesitation, went with pork ribs. Then he changed his answer to surf and turf, but we're going to go with the original answer.
We got a 50-50.
50-50.
Wow.
So surf and turf. Surf and turf.
I think you're right. I don't think we've ever had a straight 50-50.
No.
So let's go with surf and turf. I'm going to mark that as 4 out of 4.
Okay.
Okay, on our final question, preferred gem: are we looking at the blue diamond or the ruby? Jeff went with the obvious blue diamond. What did our viewers say?
Yeah, they went with Hope Diamond as well. Indeed,
Yeah.
44 with a 45.52 carat stone.
That is 5 out of 5 for all of our Mineral Talks Live viewers. I am proud to announce that you got every single answer correct. That means the next time you're in Washington, D.C., you have complimentary access to the Smithsonian Natural History Museum.
There you go.
This is
Well, that's
awesome.
really generous of you, Brian. Amazing. Okay.
It's free for everyone anyway, so there you go.
That's what it is. It is.
All
it is
right,
one of the great
questions
things.
and answers. What do our viewers have some questions? I'm sure they do for Jeff.
Yes. I can go ahead.
Yeah, the chat was very, very active. So it was really good. There was, Jeff, going back, some people were really interested in learning more about your manganese oxide. So I have sent them some link. But if you go on the Google Scholar and check manganese oxides, we also have Bob Hazen and Daniel Hammer also doing research on that. So just there is very, really good articles. But if you want to explain a little bit more about that, Jeff, go ahead.
I would do some, I mean, I think what you suggested is fine. One of the things that hopefully I will be doing is putting out a little more general information. I'm thinking even like a rocks and minerals article at some point on manganese oxides, because they just, it deserves it. But, do a Google. There's a, you'll come up with a whole bunch of sort of general papers on manganese oxides. There's been a lot of discussion about them in recent years because, we talked about where they're found next, but they're used obviously batteries, all that black stuff inside of batteries is manganese oxide. There's a lot of research being done on manganese oxides to form, for better batteries and for all kinds. Manganese is used in steel. So there's a huge literature out there. So do a Google and find a few things. But, if somebody's really interested, Eloise or Raquel, feel free to have them email me, and I can always, share a couple of PDFs of some things that might give them a good overview.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'm carry on with the manganese. Is your manganese nodule the product of a deep sea smoker?
It's a deep sea nodule, and these are found. This one's from the Pacific, and these are found paving. You said thousands of square miles in the ocean floor, and the metal. The thought is now the metals originate from these ocean spreading centers, and and ultimately get oxidized into these nodules. But why exactly these nodules is still a great question, and there's a lot of thinking that, again, there may be a biomineral aspect to this, that there's biology involved in helping to oxidize these oxides to produce these nodules. But it's not quite that simple either. It's complicated. So I don't think I'm going to answer the question. I think that I'll continue to read all the papers long into the future and hope that somebody else answers that question. But that nodule is from the Pacific Ocean floor.
Beautiful. Shifting gear into how does it work in a museum setting for donations to the Smithsonian?
So the question is, how is it to work?
Yeah, how is the donation process?
Oh, how
What
does
do
it
you
work?
need? What you don't need? Who decide? How, if I come with a bunch of pebbles, what do you do?
Oh, well, I thought you wanted, if you want to give money, it's pretty easy.
Just write it to Jeff Post.
That's right. My home address. No, no, our collection, like I think, Raquel, Eloise, I mean, anybody in museums will say the same thing. Our collections have grown through the years almost exclusively or hugely because of donations. And so it's a process that's just built into the whole curation sense of how we grow collections. We couldn't do it on our own. We don't have the resources, we don't have the time, we don't have the breadth of knowledge and creativity to duplicate what many private collectors and others have done in their lifetime. Some of these private collectors are so passionate and are so focused on areas that they become experts in things that are beyond what we can do. And so we've been really fortunate that over the years, our collections have grown because of the accumulation of these various collections. Generally these days, people, if you've got something that you think could be important to the collection, it's different, it's unusual, it's just interesting, or you're just not sure, emailing me or my colleagues is a good way to start that process. Or other, if you have local museums that you're more associated with, contacting them, explaining what you have. Sometimes we'll ask for pictures, we'll ask for descriptions. That might help us along. Then actually seeing the objects. There are things, we don't have infinite storage space. And so, we have to be thoughtful about what we take. We have to accept things that fit our needs, that will extend or expand the collection in ways that we fit our collection policies and our processes. And so sometimes I do have to say no to things, that we just don't need this or we can't use it. But then we try to find a better fit. Sometimes we may not need it, but we may know other museums or other places that will benefit from that. Also, I'll sometimes get people who offer to donate collections that maybe we don't need everything in our reference collection here, or may end up in the Blue Room or on exhibit, but might really be helpful for our various educational programs. We have an education center that has its own collections that they use for a variety of family activities and other educational outreach. And so we sometimes can steer things in that direction, or just tell people, this is probably not going to go on exhibit, but it will be really helpful for us when we go out and do educational programming or other. And so there's a lot of different ways in which materials can be used by museums, particularly larger museums that are really focused on education as well as the collections. So it's always good to contact, let people know what you have, and then go from there. But don't be upset if a museum doesn't want your collection. It's nothing personal. It's often just a matter of space and effort and staff time and everything else. But hopefully they can help you find the right home, because I'm a great believer that every collection has some value, and there's a reason why that collection is pulled together. It reflects some interest, some history, and there should be some thought put into where it ends up. And so hopefully myself and others in similar situations around the country and around the world can be helpful in making sure those collections end up in places where they're well used.
Very good. Thank you. As an example, this last summer, we shared a collection between the LA County, you, the Smithsonian, and us, because the collection was so large.
Exactly.
That we...
it was an incredibly beautifully organized collection. This was of agates. Incredible collection. This person was a better curator than I could ever hope to be. I mean, he was absolutely meticulous about documenting everything, had a complete history of this whole collection, but it was huge. It was several, storage units full of material, and he, in like 10 seconds, he could go find any specimen in there because it was so well organized. And so we love the idea of adding many of those things to our collection, but there were so many uniformly great things and some duplication that we knew we just couldn't accommodate all of it. So we contacted Raquel, Aaron Celestian at the LA County Museum, a few others actually, and we talked about, is there a way that we could together share this collection? And it turned out that the donor was thrilled with the idea, and we all were able to get a great collection of objects that essentially improved our own collections but it made sure that that collection that was so well put together, it all ended up in good places. So yeah, it was a great example of how we can really benefit by cooperating with each other.
Yeah. So now talking about the opposite side, how does the accessioning process works at the Smithsonian? And maybe you want to explain the accessioning.
Accession.
The accession for the public.
Accession, yeah. So everything that we do related to our collection is guided by a Smithsonian collection management policy. And that policy is one that's revisited pretty regularly. And so we try to keep it up to date. It gets input from all the museums and all of the different departments. And that general policy is then sort of tweaked, or not tweaked, but is added to by our own museum, because our collections may require some different care than other collections in other museums. And so it's that policy that ultimately is the document that we follow in terms of making decisions about what we do with the collection, particularly in something like deaccessioning. And so as from a curatorial point of view, I have colleagues, collection managers. You guys know Paul Powat, Russ Feather. Now I've got Gabriella Fairfan, Johan Laskew, Mike Wise is here. We try to do these decisions as consulting and in a way that we all come to some agreement. I mean, this is not mine is our decision. And so if there's something that we just feel we don't need anymore, that we have way too much of it, or more likely in many cases, something has happened, a marcasite has just fallen apart, or a pyrite, or, it's not what it used to be, and it's just a bunch of powder in a box. It's because it's a specimen that has been cataloged, we have to go through a formal deaccession process. And so that's laid out in our guidelines. We follow those rules. We have to, basically provide a justification and then go through that process. And so, yeah, curation is accession and deaccessioning. But, we're very cautious about deaccessioning because we understand that a lot of things given to us that we've acquired over the years, it's been with this sense of trust that we're going to keep these things, and we're going to make them available for the public or for science. And so we take that very seriously. But again, we have to be somewhat practical. And so, again, these decisions are ones that we just have to work through one at a time.
Thank you. And this is a bit more of a personal question. What's your favorite intern from your time at the Smithsonian?
My favorite intern? They've all been favorites. There's no way. This is like saying, which of your daughters do you like best, right? And I always tell each one that, I have a favorite daughter, but I don't tell them which one. But no. But there's, it's, one of the real pleasures of working here and real advantages of working at a place like the Smithsonian is that we have a very active intern program. We have a lot of, through various different sources and different kinds of philosophies, but we're in the summertime, our department is just often awash in interns, and seeing all these enthusiastic, early career younger people who are just excited about minerals and everything we do here is just a thrill. I mean, it's part of what keeps us all motivated and excited. And so, every year it's a great batch of interns that do great things, and I can't even begin to tell you which would be a favorite. They've all been tremendous. I mean, and so it is one of the privileges of working here is that we get an opportunity to participate in those kinds of programs and to share our interests with a variety of younger people through the years. So I'm not going to answer that one with a name. Now, if you ask me who is my favorite,
very political answer.
If you ask me who is my favorite postdoc, I could probably give you an answer to that. But
okay, now I want to know the answer. Who is your favorite postdoc?
Oh yeah. Oh, because I think Eloise is on this. By the way, absolutely, Eloise is my favorite postdoc, right? I mean,
correct answer.
Yeah.
And then we're going to end with, of course, with the hope.
Oh.
Was there any alternative modern setting made for the hope for the millennium?
I'm sorry, say that again, please. Raquel.
They're asking if there was an alternative modern setting made for the hope.
There you go. Thank you, Eloise. There's the picture with Hillary Rhoda modeling the hope. So we did do it for the millennium. We did it for the 50th anniversary of the gift of the Hope Diamond to the Smithsonian from Harry Winston. So it came in 1958. So 50 years later, we started on a project. We wanted to do something to sort of get people to think about the Hope Diamond in a new and different way and sort of give them an excuse to come back and see it again. And so we did a little bit of a competition. We had the designers at Harry Winston come up with 3 different potential designs. We put those up on our website and we invited the public to vote on which of those they would like to see the Hope Diamond set in. And so the one that you saw was the clear winner. And so then Harry Winston Company, they actually manufactured that setting. And it was actually a lot of fun. I went up a couple times to see it. You know, it's not often you get to see a piece of jewelry like that being made. They started with a 1-pound bar of platinum metal, and there was over 300 diamonds set into there. And so they created that beautiful setting, and then we mounted the Hope Diamond in there, and it went on exhibit here at the museum for a little over a year in that setting. And then it was taken out of the setting, put back into the historic Cartier setting, which is how it's exhibited today. And that setting then went back to Harry Winston.
Interesting. So Harry Winston still has that setting.
Well, I don't know if they still have it or they've sold it or they've taken it apart. At one point, I was told that there was an interested buyer that had wanted to put a sapphire or something in there. And, but I honestly don't know whether that sale ever actually happened or not.
Okay.
Jeff, if you have one more minute, it came an interesting question, which I think we know the answer. But
I have no place to go right now. That's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Can the public bid on your deaccession minerals?
Well, we don't deaccession that much that often that probably you would find that to be a very fruitful place to wait for mineral specimens to come your way. And the ones that did, you may not want anyway, because I said, typically it's because there's a problem with that specimen that no longer is what we thought it was or what it was supposed to be. So I would say, find other places to get your mineral specimens. We're probably not going to be putting them out the door fast enough to keep you interested.
Brian, Eloise, I don't know what you have. Actually, how many specimens? How big is the Smithsonian mineral collection?
Okay,
just the mineral. How many?
The mineral collection is about 375,000 specimens. And then we have the gem collections about 10,000 specimens or so. And then, I think that includes our micromounts also. We've got probably about 20,000 micromounts as well, but I think that's included in 375,000. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. I could carry on, but Eloise, Brian.
Well, as you can tell, I could carry on as well because there's nothing, it's been a great opportunity to have this conversation about, something that I've been really fortunate to be part of and have found so interesting and so enjoyable. And obviously we all like to talk about minerals. And so back to one of your questions, Brian, about the X-ray lab or Tucson, part of the reason it was a little bit hard to answer that question is one of the great things about whether it's Tucson or other shows that we go to or mineral club meetings that we're invited to, whatever it is the one thing that's always true is that you're sitting around talking to people that share an interest in minerals. And, it's coming back from those kinds of interactions is what has carried me through my career, has kept me inspired in what I do. You always come back feeling like, even though everybody may not understand exactly everything I do, particularly when it comes to manganese oxides, you always get the sense they're glad you're doing what you're doing. And
right.
So you always walk back into the department after those kinds of interactions, just stepping a little higher, feeling a little bit lighter, feeling a little more energetic, because you realize there are a bunch of people out there that are really excited about the same thing you're excited about. And it's something we're all sharing together. And it just makes you feel a little bit better about everything and realizing that people do care about what we're doing here. And so I have to say, at this point, I'm just going to say thank you to a lot of people. And I'll spend a lot of time in the next many months saying thank you to many, many people. But, every day of this job has been somebody helping us do something. And being able to have those kinds of interactions to get that kind of support in all kinds of ways has been the best part of my job. They always say, someday looking back, it's not what you did, it's who you did it with that you
Yep.
mostly remember. And so going to Tucson every year, mineral clubs, all these people, all the different folks that we've had a chance to interact with, those are the people that have made this job so incredible. And so I will use this forum, but I say many more, to just say thank you to everyone, and Brian and you and Raquel and Eloise, the opportunity to have this chance to just, say this to a lot of other people again. I really appreciate it. It's been great having a chance to share why I feel so fortunate about being in a place like the Smithsonian.
Absolutely. And Jeff, speaking for the three of us, we resonate very strongly with what you're saying. I think the biggest casualty that our industry, our hobby has had over the pandemic was that loss of that personal connection to each other and that opportunity to have random conversations with people and learn more about each person.
Yeah.
And that was really kind of the idea that Raquel and Eloise had as for starting this entire Mineral Talks Live program. So we get it. We appreciate everything that you've done. We get that it's important to make connections out there. And I hope that through this program, when people run into you at future shows, they will have things that will enable them, empower them to start a conversation. They may not know before how to start a conversation with you because you're one of the big names out there. But now, having gotten to know you more on a personal level, we hope that our show can inspire others to come up to you and start talking to you.
I would love that. Absolutely love that. It's like I say, it's the pleasure of what we do is sharing with each other. So I look forward to more of that. And again, thank you for this chance to talk to all of you actually, and all the questions. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I know your time is very valuable, and I absolutely appreciate you being on today's show.
Well, hopefully it'll get less valuable at some point, right? In some ways, but no, I can't think of a better
We'll still appreciate every moment.
This has been absolutely enjoyable. I can't think of a better way to spend my time, and just one more of those things I'll look back at someday and say how lucky I was to have a chance to be part of all this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You honor us. And so for all the viewers out there, that is the end of today's show. We're really glad that all of you could join us. Tune in 2 weeks. We're going to have one more show before 2022 is over, and it's going to be our holiday show. So we'll make an announcement next week, and we hope to see you then. Until then, have a great day. Live every life with aloha. Take care.